Okay, in this chapter we're going to be discussing defined names. So first of all, what is a defined name? A defined name is a way of replacing a cell reference or a range with text name. For example, I could replace E4, E11, i.e. this range here, with just the word cost. And the purpose of this is making your Excel file a lot easier to read. And this is one of the core lessons that they teach you in Excel modeling, which is to make your formulas as simple and as easy to read as possible, so anyone can pick it up and understand. But it also has a number of other benefits, which you'll soon find out as we go through this. So the first thing we're going to be talking about is how to create named ranges using the name box. So the name box is just this section up here, and it's a way of actually quickly going to a certain name range that is already defined. For example, let's say I want to quickly name these cells here as maker. What we can do is just select the cell range and then in the box up here, simply type maker. Now if I click away and click back up here through the down arrow, you'll see that I can see maker as an option, as the only option. Now what that means is if I click maker over here, what it is going to do is just reference the entire cell range. So as you can see here, this is now selected when I type in maker. What this also means is in this formula here, I can now replace the reference to C4 to C11 with maker with just the text maker. You don't even need the quotation marks because it's not just text, it's actually a link to a cell range that is defined. So if I press enter, you'll get the same result and the formula is easier to read. So let me just undo that. Okay, we're back to where we were. Okay, so the next thing that we're going to talk about is using the names to select ranges. So it's the other way around. And using the names in type formulas as we just did just now. So the inverse is if we just select up here the named range, it'll select the named range itself. And we've been through how we can replace each of these with the name of a range and it will still work as is. So we can also create non-contiguous named ranges. So if you watched my beginner course for Excel, we discussed the use of ranges on non-contiguous, which means a set of ranges which aren't adjacent and they're separated by selecting cells and then holding down Control, and you can select non-adjacent cells to be part of the same range. Now, the importance here is we can also create named range for non-contiguous. So let's say we'll call this non-con. And now, as we click away and click back on this page, we can see that range, and now it's selected here, is also a named range. So named ranges also have an interesting function which allows you to navigate through the Excel workbook. So now that we have these two ranges set up, let's go to the furthest possible tab away from this workbook. We'll go to the first tab. Now instead of going manually back to where we were, what we can do is go up here and select the name range, and Excel will take us right to the tab and even the range that that name is chosen. The next thing we're going to do is another way of selecting named ranges. So what we can do is use the keyboard shortcut Control-Shift F3, and this is the named range selector. So the first step is to select the text that we want to define as a range combined with the title, or i.e. the names that we want as the named range for those columns. So let's select all of these together and press Control-Shift F3. Now you can also name this, you can also access this by this button over here under the formulas, create from selection. Now this generates this pop-up box over here and it says create names from the values in the top row. Yes, that's what we want there. And let's just untick this column because there's no names in the left row. So let's press OK. Now, as what you'll notice when we click on this down arrow is you'll now see maker, spare, and cost as three separate named ranges which we can use For example, maker selects that, cost selects that. So it's a great way of naming ranges quickly. So another way we can identify all the named ranges that we currently have, as well as editing and removing them, is through the named range function. This is accessible through the Formula tab in this section here, Named Manager, which you can also access through your keyboard by pressing Ctrl F3. When you get here, you'll see the same output as you would have seen in this name box up here, but with the additional values, the additional fields of values that the cells are referencing to, the formula fields those are referring to, and the scope, meaning where is this definition used. It's used throughout the workbook for each of these. And here we can delete ranges that we no longer need, or we can edit ranges that we no longer need. So a handy way of managing your named ranges. The next thing we're going to be talking about is documenting defined named ranges. So in an Excel workbook, it is often best practice to have a tab somewhere where you have a mapping of all of your named ranges. Perhaps you've created a new tab at the front of your workbook. Let's move this to the front and call it mapping. This creates a nice, neat organizational structure for your workbook and helps the reviewer identify what is a named range. To do this, quickly select the Define Named button and then Define Names. Press the Use in Formula button, paste names, select all, paste list. Your named ranges will now be posted in column D, and the reference that they are linked to as the source data will be pasted in column E. So a nice quick way of pasting all this in a single place. Now let's jump back to our named ranges tab. The last thing that I'm going to show you is how to apply the names function. So I quickly showed you before how changing this cell to the name of the named range makes the formula function as it did before. But there's a fast way to do this to replace everything automatically with the named ranges. Simply select the formula cell, press Defined Names in the drop-down and press Apply Names. You can then select all of the named ranges you wish to apply to this formula and press OK. You'll notice now that the formula will change from as it is now, with these difficult to read formula ranges, to text, which is a lot easier to read and is the purpose as to why we use named ranges. So let's quickly check this formula. It's exactly the same as it was before, but it's so much easier. So it's saying the sum range is the cost, so we're looking up the value there. In the maker column is the first criteria. We are looking for a Ford. In the second criteria, we're looking for the spare part, and that part we're looking for is ignition. So this is so much easier to use. Now the benefit of using this function up here, apply names, instead of manually changing it. Number one, if we delete a named range in here, it's not going to screw up the formula where it would, it has there. But the number one main benefit is efficiency. So number one, it's going to do it a lot faster than if you had done it. And number two is that it reduces human error. For example, if I had gone through and changed C11 accidentally to cost, because I thought it did relate to it, but it didn't, we wouldn't know that, but it would make our formula output wrong. However, if you use this define name function, it's going to cross-reference everything automatically and apply the correct named range. So it's speed and accuracy. So that covers everything for named ranges. Hopefully you understand why it's so important we use these ranges in workbooks, both for presentation, ease of review, for accuracy, and a whole bunch of other added features which makes your Excel more powerful.